It's the return of the flat tax. Kansas Republicans are advancing their new tax relief plan. What's in it this time, and will it stand? Plus, if you had your doubts about Medicaid expansion coming up this year, think again. For the first time in 4 years, a bill is getting a hearing. Will it make it across the finish line? And we're on the heels of a presidential preference primary in Kansas. But with a Biden-Trump rematch shaping up, the big question is it worth the cost? You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Rebecca Chung. We have a lot to dig into. And joining me today to break things down is political analyst Bob Beatty. All right, Bob, let's start with the return of the flat tax. The Kansas Senate voted 29-11 to pass this on Thursday. Now, this is a plan a little bit different from the last one, mainly because it includes a gradual decrease over time. So Republicans failed to override the governor's veto of their plan to set the state income tax to 5.25% earlier this year. And now this current plan would set the state income tax to 5.7% for tax year 2024. Then it would gradually decrease each year until reaching 5.45% in tax year 2029. It would also raise the standard deduction and personal exemption. The plan would cost about $1.3 billion through 2027, and that's compared to the $1.6 billion that the failed plan cost. But some opponents are still asking Republicans to dump it. The Senate had a hearing just a couple days before bringing it into the floor for a vote, and the GOP is standing by their new bill.
It addresses, one, the wants of a lot of people, the single rate, but also some of the concerns. But if you take a look at the math on who really benefits, it is the low and middle income.
Now, as for the governor, she's still saying no to any form of a flat tax, it seems. Her office sent us a statement, and they're calling for the legislature to take, quote, irresponsible flat tax proposals off the table. Now, Bob, this bill is now heading to the House. It's going to the tax committee. But if it makes it to the floor, will Republicans have enough votes to override a veto if one comes down in the House side?
Well, what's that line from the horror film? It's back. Some people wondered if the flat tax would return, and it is back. And really, as you mentioned, the concern from Governor Kelly is that the flat tax puts Kansas, into that one flat tax bracket, but then doesn't leave, sort of any room for maneuverability. And so what some Democrats would like to do is actually just cut the 3 different tiers. That was actually proposed, but got voted down. Right now there's 3 tiers, 3.1%, 5.25%, and 5.7%. But Republicans and clearly a majority really love the flat tax. Now, is there enough votes to override Governor Kelly's veto? Because she will veto any flat tax that gets to her desk. And the really insightful answer, Rebecca, is we don't know. Now, you might say, wait, but the recent vote, there was more than enough votes in the Senate to do this. But there's already a couple senators that voted yes, who said they probably wouldn't vote yes to override the governor's veto. So what's going on here? Well, maybe the senators that are against the flat tax, or at least the current flat tax, they want it to go to what's called a conference committee, which is where the House and the Senate bargain and change the bill a bit, and they're interested in seeing what comes out of it. So there's still some things to happen, Rebecca.
Okay, well, in the House, as you were talking about or noting, when it came down to overriding the governor's veto of the last flat tax plan, there were 5 Republicans, I believe, that voted against it. So let's talk about the dynamics also in the Senate. Senator David Haley, a Democrat from Kansas City, voted in favor of this new flat tax bill. Then Senator Dennis Pyle from Hiawatha, who recently switched back to the Republican Party after changing his affiliation to independent, also voted to approve the plan, and that's despite siding with the governor earlier this year on her proposal. Then Senator John Dahl, a Republican from Garden City, the governor also siphoned over to her side with her tax plan, is now voting in favor of this new flat tax bill as well. And Senator Rob Olson, though, Republican from Olathe, who also sided with the governor's plan earlier this year, seems to have kept that promise and sided with Democrats on this new bill, voting against it. So, Bob, like you said, a lot going on here, but what exactly is going on? Why do we see some people kind of switching things up a little bit?
So, yeah, Brad Cooper from the Sunflower State Journal has reported that Senator Haley actually has said that he didn't mean to vote yes. So he's actually a no vote. Something about that he said no, but it came across as yes. But anyway, he's a no vote. Senator Pyle did vote yes, but said that he's still not a big fan of the flat tax. So he will get, of course, another chance if the governor vetoes it. Senator Dahl, we haven't heard from. So that's why I say it's in flux. But if you think about this, Rebecca, this was a free vote. You could vote for a flat tax. You could vote for all these tax cuts. But if you know the governor is going to veto it, then you get another vote. And you could vote no at that occasion, and it wouldn't happen. So you could essentially tell your constituents, I voted for this huge tax cut, but then I didn't vote to sustain the veto. But you still get to say you voted for the tax cut. And remember, it's an election year. So both sides, Republicans and Democrats, have political action committees with millions of dollars in there. So this is America. It's democracy. Our representatives have to think about November and what it is they think their constituents will want to see when they run for re-election.
Okay. The big question now is, will Republicans in both chambers be able to get their plan through this year? Or in the end, will they have to move to take action on the governor's proposal?
That's the question. Now, the governor, of course, has threatened a special session. We saw, several quotes from several representatives saying they really don't want to be in Topeka in June because they're not from here. And one of them, I even read, said that he has another job that he needs to be at. So the idea of a special session is not attractive to a lot of these representatives. So if this current flat tax does not get through this time, I think we actually may see some compromise going forward, some form of tax cuts that may not include a flat tax, but because I just don't think a lot of these representatives, A, want to be here in June for a special session, and B, they want to be able to go back in November and say, hey, we got a tax cut done.
All right, Bob, thank you so much. Another bill is returning to the State House. Medicaid expansion is now getting its first hearing in years. Will lawmakers move forward with the proposal? Plus, the gender marker battle in Kansas continues. What's next in the court fight over driver's licenses? We'll be right back after the break. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Vanderbilt's has one of the largest selections of boots and jeans in the area. Save $45 on durable Wolverine overpass boots. Sale price $119.99. New style, check out Timberland Titan EV boots, $149.99. Save $26 on these comfortable Iron Age work boots, $119.99. Great selection of FXD work pants in store now.
Your work boots center, Vanderbilt. When a rookie stunt driver meets the trainer who thought he'd seen it all.
Again.
There's bound to be action. But this is no ordinary blockbuster. It's a Nissan sales event ad, so you better act fast. Don't miss your chance to drive away in a new Nissan.
Let's roll.
Hurry into the Nissan Thrill of the Drive sales event.
Now get 1.9% APR financing for 60 months or get $2,000 in MAC cash on the 2023 Nissan Rogue.
I'm Justin Glasgow, owner of Performance Tire and Auto. This season, don't just change your tires, upgrade them and save. From March 1st to April 30th, get up to a $100 Cooper Tire reward with the purchase of 4 qualifying tires. Drive away confident. No matter what the weather, your journey to better performance starts here. Visit us today at either of our 2 locations, 17th and Topeka Boulevard or 1735 North Kansas Avenue.
There's so many reasons to watch Kelly.
I can't even focus on what you're talking about right now.
Aquaman wins! It's all on the Kelly Clarkson Show. Count me in. Weekdays.
Weekdays at 3 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. We're moving on to our next topic now, Medicaid expansion. Bob, I think some people thought this wouldn't happen this year, but a hearing is scheduled in the Senate and House for the governor's bills. And this is the first time in 4 years. So how could this play out? Do you think the bills will actually make it to the floor?
I'm in shock. When you said some people, you were talking about me. I didn't think this was going to happen. 4 years is a long time, and we have to keep in mind that Governor Kelly, since the first day she got into office, has been pushing for Medicaid expansion. It almost happened a few years ago, 4 years ago, but it got scuttled by the Republican leadership, and I thought it disappeared essentially until at least after this November election. But the governor has been pushing. So yeah, I'm surprised there's going to be hearings. And these hearings are going to be wild. What I mean by that is I think there's going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, supporters of Medicaid expansion, flooding the State House. So Rebecca, if you'll be covering it, just be aware you're going to be in these big crowds. It might be reminiscent of some years ago when Governor Brownback was governor and people were upset with the big tax cuts that he had put in place, and they sort of flooded the legislature wearing red shirts, and it was quite a scene. I think there will be a lot of people in support of Medicaid expansion at these hearings, but the interesting point is that the Republican chair, Brenda Landwehr, is traditionally very tough, and in a previous meeting over another issue, she actually was throwing people out of the committee room. So it could get also a little controversial as well. It could play out in many different ways.
Okay, also a major court order coming down over the gender marker battle here in Shawnee County. A judge has now indefinitely extended the order that blocks people from changing their sex on driver's licenses. The ACLU is appealing this order, and looking at this order through the judge, from the judge, what could this mean for the case itself, do you think? And will this have to move maybe to a higher court?
Yes, that was a very interesting decision by the circuit judge in Shawnee County about this case. Essentially, the argument was that the new law is unconstitutional and harms transgendered individuals when they aren't allowed to change their gender on their driver's license. And the judge said, actually, in the judge's opinion, nobody proved to her that they would actually be harmed by this. And she also argued that she did not see it as a constitutional question. So yes, it's being appealed, and it will go to the appeals panel in Kansas, and keep going through the system. But it's certainly a loss for the groups that aren't happy with the law, and their hopes now rest with the appeals court.
But could we eventually see this go to the Supreme Court,
Sure.
do you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, if it's anything involving a constitutional issue, could go to the Supreme Court. Whether they would take it or not is another question. But it looks like it's an early loss for the Kelly administration and the ACLU. But yes, there's a lot more steps they can go through.
All right, Bob, thank you so
Sure.
much. Kansas is just a couple days away from the presidential preference primary. But now, with a limited number of options and millions invested into a statewide primary, was it worth it? We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Would you rather hear about sports from people who like to talk sports, or hear from the people who actually play and coach sports?
The best predictor of future success is past success.
K-Nation has the interviews and coverage you want for all things KU and K-State.
When you do the small things correctly, big things will happen.
Join us every Sunday night after 27 News at 10 for another exciting week of K-Nation. Sponsored by 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
We all exist here on this planet to benefit others. That's how my wife and I feel when we give to St. Jude every month. Our giving to St. Jude is right up there with our mortgage. That's the priority that we put on giving to St. Jude.
Yo les puedo decir que es la satisfacción más grande que tengo. Es que yo estoy dando vida al ser un donante.
We just think of how we would feel if our kids had cancer. It's giving back for the blessings that we have been given in our life.
It's a cause that should resonate with anyone who believes that a child should be able to live a long, healthy life.
There's something about putting your arms around a child and bringing comfort. That's something that we can all agree on.
When everyone comes together for this good, nothing can stop it.
The story of Grace Med has always been told through its people, both those who serve and those who it is our honor to serve. We meet at the intersection of compassion and vulnerability, bringing health where there was illness and hope where there was despair. Our patients come to us bearing the weight of living in the margins, and we share the love of Jesus Christ with them by providing compassionate quality health care for all their physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Because health restored is always hope renewed. Find hope today by scheduling an appointment with Grace Med.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. Next up, the Kansas presidential preference primary. And Bob, that's coming up on March 19th. Before we get into what voters need to keep in mind, let's talk about the cost, because the state invested about $5 million into this. Now it's looking like it will be a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump, no matter how people vote. And we also asked Democrat and Republican leaders about this. Party chairs seem to think that it's still worth the cost. The Secretary of State believes it should be a party function. Still, his office says they find fulfillment in knowing that party leaders found trust in the state's election system to opt for a state-run election this year. But Bob, what do you think? Is this worth the cost?
I think the way that Kansas did it this year, no, it's not worth the cost. And I'll explain this a bit. So for pretty much the last 50 years, obviously the parties have to pick their delegates. Yes, that's part of the American process, to pick the delegates from Kansas for the presidential conventions. Okay, we understand that. But for the last 50 or so years, the parties have been doing it in things called caucuses, but they could also have other ways of doing it. And they've actually run some really great caucuses. I remember in 2008 in the Democrats, in 2012 and 16 with the Republicans, and we had presidential candidates come to Kansas. And was the turnout great? It was 15, I'm thinking 15, 20% of all voters. And here's the key. Kansas taxpayers didn't pay for it. The parties paid for this. Okay. So there have been in previous years a couple primaries, but when you have a state-run primary, that means, as the Secretary of State was alluding to, you got to open up the voting halls, you got to get the machines out, you got to pay the workers, and these are contests in which it may be about 15% turnout, so a few 100,000 people at most. And here's the key: unaffiliateds don't even get to vote; they don't get to participate. So, given that, maybe the parties should run it, but if they're not going to run it, at least get the most out of your money. And here's how you get the most out of your money. Unaffiliated should get to vote, right? So the most people get to participate. 2, set the date on or before Super Tuesday. Because here's what's happened this year. You said Trump and Biden looks like they have the nominations. They have the nominations. They have enough delegates. They've got it. It's over. So now it's just the parties in Kansas picking their people who are going to the conventions. Big whoop, right? No relevancy at all in terms of who's going to be Trump or Biden or anybody else. So if they were going to do it, they should have done it on Super Tuesday or before. Why they picked after Super Tuesday, maybe they had a reason. I don't know, but yes, I think as soon as they didn't allow unaffiliateds, put it after Super Tuesday, they sort of wrote a bad story there, and a couple $1 million probably of taxpayer money is to be honest, going down the drain.
Now, also, let's talk about some things people have to keep in mind when they're voting in the primary on the 19th. So what should they bring? What does the ballot look like? How does it differ from a regular primary?
So it's like any regular election. It's a little bizarre because Democrats and Republicans will go and they'll see a ballot, Republican, for example, and it'll say Donald Trump, and then it'll say Ron DeSantis, and Ryan Binkley, I believe it is. And DeSantis and Binkley have dropped out.
Right. And Haley is.
And Haley, yes.
Exactly.
So that's pretty bizarre when, okay, there's only one candidate that actually is really running. That's what we've already discussed. That's pretty weird, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And the same basically with Joe Biden. There's just two people that no one's ever heard of. So they really, it's kind of a silly vote. But okay, people will still go vote because a lot of people like to vote. And it'll be like any regular election. They'll bring their ID and go to their local polling place. The other odd little thing is that if you are unaffiliated, you can show up and then register for the party, in which case you're no longer unaffiliated, and then they'll let you vote in the primary. But so you might say, well, Bob, you just said unaffiliateds couldn't vote. Think about it. You have to change from unaffiliated to a party, so you're not unaffiliated anymore, so you can't vote.
Right.
I know a lot of people who are unaffiliated, and they take it seriously. They're like, oh, I picked that for a reason, and needless to say, they're not too happy that the idea that they would go do this just for one day. And so most of them aren't going to do that. So those are the odd little things. Now, there were some statistics that came out about a week or so ago that showed early voting was at 1% for both parties, which is obviously not very high.
Yeah.
It's possible the turnout for this could be less than 10% of registered Democrats and Republicans, which would mean that total registered voters, the turnout could be less than 6% or 5%. So people should calculate that when they think that costs $2 million.
The presidential election is also stirring controversy in the Republican Party. A video surfacing online this past week getting a lot of pushback. We're talking about that next. We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Would you rather hear about sports from people who like to talk sports, or hear from the people who actually play and coach sports?
The best predictor of future success is past success.
K-Nation has the interviews and coverage you want for all things KU and K-State.
When you do the small things correctly, big things will happen.
Join us every Sunday night after 27 News at 10 for another exciting week of K-Nation. Sponsored by 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
There's so many reasons to watch Kelly.
I can't even focus on what you're talking about right now.
Aquaman wins! It's all on the Kelly Clarkson Show. Count me in. Weekdays.
Weekdays at 3 on 27 KSNT.
We really have the best people in the field that 100% want to work hard for children and families. And so it's a joy to come to work. And knowing as you're building relationships with parents, you have a lifelong impact, not only for the child that you are working with, but for the entire family.
Emotionally, they've basically taken a weight off my shoulders by helping out with the things that they help with. They're not just therapists. They're like a second family to us.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. I'm Rebecca Chung. Shocking video surfaced online after a Republican Party event this past week. The Kansas GOP is denying involvement in a controversial Johnson County Republican Party fundraiser. Videos of the event emerged online of attendees attacking a mannequin resembling President Biden. And in a text message sent to one of our reporters, current Kansas GOP chairman Mike Brown says the event on Friday had nothing to do with the Kansas GOP. Now, former Kansas GOP chairman Mike Kuckelman was not there, but he did get calls, or said he got calls, about what was going on during the event Friday night. And he says the majority of Kansas Republicans do not condone violent behavior.
I hope the public realizes most rank and file Republicans abhor this kind of conduct. What are we teaching children when we have adults who will take a bat and beat the head of a mannequin dressed up and with a mask, making it appear to be President Biden.
Now, the Johnson County GOP chairwoman also sent us a statement saying, in part, the Johnson County Republican Party's successful series of events last weekend was tarnished by a brief incident where a mask depicting President Biden was added to an interactive self-defense display. The mask was regrettable and removed. Now, Bob, this video also received backlash from people within the party. What's your take on this event, especially as we're heading into election season?
Well, sadly, I'm not surprised. But to give some context here, we saw Mike Kuckelman. He's the former chair of the Republican Party. And I did see a statement by somebody in the current Republican Party who said, well, he's disgruntled. And that has a bad connotation. But Mike Kuckelman has not been happy with the direction of the Republican Party since he left. And part of that is what he's arguing is that that there's been too extreme behavior in some of the leadership. That's his argument, and it's really, that's why I'm not surprised though, is because since Donald Trump rose on the scene, there has been increases in this idea that it's okay to talk about sort of maybe more violent political behavior. When he first ran, Donald Trump, at a rally, would sort of almost encourage people to do things to the media, but also famously said, somebody beat up that protester and I'll pay for the legal bills. So it's, the political culture in the last few years has become nastier. You can even drive around Topeka and see people with flags that say F, the profane word, and then Biden. I never saw that, 5 years ago. And so unfortunately now some behaviors like this happen that we probably wouldn't have seen 5 to 10 years ago.
All right, Bob, thank you so much.
Sure.
And that was your look inside Kansas politics. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas politics, then follow us on social media. Follow us on X at InKSPolitics and on Facebook. Just search Inside Kansas Politics. We'll also post the full video on YouTube. Just search KSNT News and check ksnt.com/inside-kansas-politics for past episodes. If you have a story you want Kansas state legislators to hear or topics you think we should cover, let us know. You can email us at ikp@ksnt.com. We'll see you right here, same time, same place. Have a good day.